Welcome back to Love Roller Coaster. This is episode 7. We call it Unfriended. The reasons why friendships actually break apart.
The quality of your friendships greatly determine the quality of your life.
What are the red flags in a friendship?
Someone who is constantly a taker, not a giver. I think that's a big red flag for me. What's a red flag for you?
If you're the one who's making all the effort.
The minute you start looking into yourself, the minute you start valuing yourself,
You'll find lots of people falling away.
I think another one that's really big for me is actually someone who gossips and is very negative. If they're gossiping about someone to you, there is a 99.9% chance that they're gossiping about you to someone else.
actual friendships go deeper than just a shared connection.
At least have those 5 friends that you can count on the fingers of one hand. And I think if you have that, these people will be there for you no matter what comes your way. I think you're pretty blessed. Welcome back to Love Roller Coaster. This is episode 7 and I'm your co-host Gaurav Bhagat.
And I'm Mrinalini.
So today's episode, we call it Unfriended, all right? The reasons why friendships actually break apart. And it is going to be one really impactful episode. Mrinalini, any thoughts on friendship?
So it's been well established that the quality of your friendships greatly determine the quality of your life. They can be uplifting and joyful, or they can be draining and toxic. So today's episode, we're really going to get into some of the aspects of relationships which one needs to really look out for if you really want to choose the right people and have the right people in your lives. So Gaurav, what are the red flags in a friendship? What would you say is?
Yeah, so I think some of the top red flags for me is that someone who's always taking, and is never giving back. And I'm talking about, even be it in terms of time, be it in terms of, obviously, I think I am known for the fact that anytime I go to a meal or I take someone out, I'm always, paying the bill. But I think sometimes people start taking that for granted as well. So I see a lot of takers. So to me, if someone who is constantly a taker, not a giver, I think that's a big red flag for me. What's a red flag for you?
So I feel like, one big issue in a relationship is that you know that it's not going the right way if you're the one who's making all the effort, right? If you're the one who's making all the effort to get in touch, the calls, constantly finding out, what's going on in your life, you're the one making plans, and there is no effort from the other side. But if you choose to stay quiet, you're not going to have any interaction. So that's like a big one. I have spoken to a lot of people about this, right? And I've asked a lot of people about the pain points, like what are the negative experiences they've had with people, with their friends that have made them kind of step away. Number one on the list is disrespect.
But disrespect to who?
So disrespect to you in terms of, I feel there are many forms of disrespect, but the one is putting you down in public. So nice to you when you're together and on your face and everything. Of course, when you're talking to a friend one to one, the dynamic is different. When you're in a group, you will find a completely different dynamic with your friends, right? And then you'll find that there'll be some people who will be talking derisively of you. Or, when you put a point across, they'll be like, oh, please, you don't know anything. Or, putting you down, pointing out characteristics of yours, which, they laugh at or they talk badly about. I think that is like a big no for me. That is disrespect. And the other form of disrespect is not responding to calls or messages. Now I find that really ridiculous. Like if I am sending you a message, and this is basic human courtesy, it takes literally 10 seconds to say yes, no, maybe.
Yeah, they can do it back they can reply back at a time, like later in the day, or they can drop a message saying, that's not right now, I'll call you back.
Or even if you've forgotten, at some point you'll be like, hey, listen, I'm so sorry, this message slipped, or I missed your call and I was really busy. But there has to be some response at a, even if it's a day or 1.5 days later. But if this is a habit, or, you're messaging somebody about something and they just leave you on read and they don't bother. And I found it all generally happens with people who have not turned on their blue ticks, who've turned off their blue ticks
On WhatsApp.
on WhatsApp, because it gives them that plausible deniability that, okay, I didn't read your message.
Coming back to that earlier point, where you mentioned, I think another really big red flag is when you're there in a one-to-one situation, a one-on-one situation, they're cordial and they're nice. And I think when you're in a group setting, and if someone else is picking on you, okay, and that friend is not stepping in, I think that's an issue, because then they're probably just trying to be, not in line with, what they should be. So I just think that, that's a bit of an issue, that if someone else is, putting you down and they're not stepping up for you, then perhaps that's not a friendship.
That's true. One thing I've noticed, that at every stage in your life, you're going to invite people who will just validate who you are inside at that point. So there, friendships are so dynamic. There are some people who had the same friends like all their lives. And there are some people where there's churn and churn and churn and churn. And I have seen that a lot of the churn is when you started making changes in your life, you will start seeing your friendships changing. So I'll give you an example. So the couple of men I spoke to, they both gave the same example, saying that, as long as we were drinking and partying and, there were a whole bunch of people that, you would socialize with all the time and you thought were really good friends. But the minute they decided to stop drinking, go cold turkey and just stop indulging in alcohol and whatever addictions, they found that they lost most of their friends.
But was that because they were not fun anymore, or was that because that their situation changed?
I think it's because they wanted a particular something from them which they're not getting anymore. And those people were obviously the ones who really wanted to have fun. Now, this is not the characteristic of a real friendship, right?
Sure.
Because real, actual friendships go deeper than just a shared connection of something that you like to do together. A deeper friendship is about no matter where you are in life, you want to be with that person, not because of what they're doing, not because of how they're, uh, how rich they are, or how fun they are, or how whatever they are. It's because you really value that person in your life.
Right.
So, because I've stopped being fun anymore, or because my circumstances have changed and I've lost all my money, I'm not going to dump you because of all that. But that's what happens all the time.
Yeah. I think one big reason why I drifted apart from certain people is because, like you mentioned, you change as a person, and then you find that your values aren't aligned anymore, right? So some of my closest friends, I mean, the fact that they were great, they were fun people, they were, they were, shared, learnings and bonds over the years. But there came a stage where, either they were being just what is out of integrity for me, when it comes to the relationships they were in, with their, husbands, wives, boyfriends, girlfriends, parents, things that they were doing and how they were showing up in the world. I think that just didn't align with my values anymore. And hence I took a step back and I said, okay, listen, this is something that's not working out. So I think it's also that in a really big way as well for many.
Yeah, that's true. And the minute you start looking into yourself, the minute you start valuing yourself, the minute you start having boundaries, you'll find lots of people falling away.
So true.
I was talking to a friend who was like, there's this a very good friend of hers who used to take a lot of advantage. Like, she was always like, okay, do this, do that. And this girl would go out of her way, she would bend over backwards to accommodate this person. And she was very dominating and bossy and, likes to control people. So that's another aspect of friendship we'll talk about, like, control. But she was always like, oh, do this, do that. Let's go here. We take your car. Let's do this, all that. And the minute this girl decided to stop it, and she said, okay, I've put my foot down. I'm not going to do everything you ask all the time. She got a response like, are you okay? Like, is everything all right with you? Like, you changed so much. I think you should go and see somebody.
Because she stopped doing what she wanted her to do.
Yeah. Like, oh my God, please get help to keep being the doormat that you always were. What?
So when she started standing up for herself, it was
Yeah.
like
Yeah. It was like,
a
okay.
sign that this is not working out.
Yeah.
I think another one that's really big for me is actually someone who gossips and is very negative.
Oh, yeah. Negativity.
So I think on the gossip piece, and I realized that, and I think everyone who's watching this should realize the point is if they're gossiping about someone to you, there is a 99.9% chance that they're gossiping about you to someone else. And also, then the other thing is negativity. I mean, there's certain people I knew, and every time you'd call them, it would be, oh, sickness, illness, market crash होने वाली है, World War III होने वाला है, किसी ने ऐसा कर दिया, वो कर दिया. So, I mean, the whole thing is that, there's always a negative connotation. And here I've got stickers on my workstation. This is no negativity and all of that. And then here I've got a guy who's like pakaying me. So, I think that's a big reason for me to cut people off as well.
One thing about sickness and illness, I mean, that's where you should be empathetic. That's where you should feel for them.
All the time?
But if that's their life, that's their life.
Yeah.
Illness and sickness, I mean, some people, they just can't get out of it. And there you should have a little bit of empathy here.
I mean,
Okay,
they'll
I'll
have
show
my
up for
ear
you
if
for
it's
that.
for like, a few weeks or, like a couple of months. But every time, I mean, if that's all someone's talking about, then I think that's a bit of an issue.
Yeah, okay. But here I feel that, I think up to 2016, I was quite a negative person. And I didn't know how to change that. I always felt like, oh God, this is not happening to me. That's not happening to me. I was always looking at, what I didn't have.
Right. What you were lacking or missing.
And what I was lacking. And then I think it did have an impact on, my relationships. And I was inviting more of, like I had a lack of self-confidence and everything. And I was inviting people who were making me feel more of the same.
Right. You were attracting more of the misery in a way.
Yeah. And the minute I realized that, my thoughts are in my control, the minute I realize I am as good as anybody else, the minute I realize if you don't love yourself, no one is going to love you,
True.
things changed. I lost a lot of friends. I lost very, very good friends. I realized that my friendships were not very uplifting.
Right.
And so, that negativity, always complaining, always the thing. And then, you're in a group and then you're sitting and gossiping about people. And all you're doing is, pulling somebody down or talking crap about somebody. Or, you're in a group where, I'm not saying this is what I was doing, but, this is another example where, you're in a group where you're making some random person's, vulnerability or sad moments like drawing room conversation. I can't do that anymore.
Sure.
Because now it's like I've decided there is going to be little to no negativity in my life. And now when I come across people who are talking ill of others, talking about others in a negative way, or, cribbing about things all the time, I just find it very difficult. And again, I was talking to somebody yesterday who was like, I can't take this. I mean, here's a group of friends and they just trashing everybody all the time. She's like, I can't take it anymore.
Of course. And like I said, 99.9% chance they're going to be trashing her when she's not there. And they're going to be trashing other people who are not there. So those are people that you avoid like the plague. I mean, those are people you stay away from.
And these are also the types who are very controlling. Like, they will want to control who you're friends with.
Sure.
And if you're very good friends with someone, they will trash that person.
Yeah. Yeah.
You'll find people who come to your life who want to be best friends with all your friends. And then once they get into that, then they'll start, telling them negative stuff about you, icing you out. I've quite a few friends who've experienced this. And that's also something that you have to be a little aware of.
Oh, 100%. I mean, that's a real red flag. I just find if you've got someone who you've introduced to someone for the first time and they're already, exchanging, WhatsApp messages and Instagram, they're connected, and next thing you know that they're making plans without you in it.
Yeah.
And it's only the second or third time they met. I'm like, wow, that's something that you wanna, be mindful of.
See,
And
it's okay. Like, if you have a very close circle of friends and someone else and you really regard, they come into your life and you introduce them to the others, you will automatically, like if you have them in your life, you will automatically want them to gel with your close-knit circle of friends. And you won't have an issue if they don't make you feel left out.
sure.
Right? Either side. But the issue will come if you start feeling excluded. And instincts are very strong, yeah. People are not stupid. The minute, you really become self-aware, the minute you have boundaries, the minute you realize that, I deserve uplifting, loyal, good friends, you will lose a lot of people who are not there for you in that capacity, but you will find those people.
Right.
Because again, you're transmitting whatever energy you have inside. I mean, that when that changes, you will find things changing around you. I think it's so important. Like what you think of yourself is what you're going to attract. I just saw that the minute I changed my energy, I started getting givers as friends. 3 years ago, right, when Avtar Singh, our cook, he just dropped dead in front of us, and it was traumatic.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think any family member's death has affected me as much as this.
Sure.
He worked with us for 20 years. And I remember being in the hospital with you, and I'm howling and I'm crying and I'm talking to this friend of mine. And I was like, this has happened. Like 2, 3 of my friends,
Sure.
they found out because, you had written in the tar group.
Right.
I didn't even have to ask. There were plates of food for dinner. There were plates of food for lunch. I never had to ask anyone for anything. There were 2, 3 friends who just were like, hey, don't even bother about. I mean, that is friendship.
Yeah.
One of my friends, she even gave money for the boy, his family.
Yeah, and I think that's another level of friendship, and those are priceless. And I think what you've been able to build in the community and somehow with your inner core circle, I think the friendships that you have
I have very
are
few.
fantastic.
I have very
And you
few.
don't need many. A lot of
Yeah.
people are like, "Mere itne
Yeah,
zyada
but
dost
the
hain."
ones that I choose to spend my time and energy on, because I'm a giver in friendships. Okay, I maybe have not been a giver in friendships before, because also maybe because I gauge what I am to people before I give of myself. And if I don't see that kind of affection, I don't waste my energy on people. When you meet people, they're all on their best behavior.
Yeah.
Right? And they're all so much fun until an incident happens or an event happens where you see a side of them that you maybe not like. Or, I'm not saying that I'm the best friend. I may have been not a very good friend to people myself. Maybe in my whiny days, I was irritating as hell, right? But I'm not that anymore.
Sure.
And as a result, now I'm like, okay, if I'm going to give of myself in a friendship, I'm going to give. I'm going to give like their family. So, I think with a friendship, it's so important to be there for the little things also. Like I should be able to depend on you. Again, we're not talking about friendships that are just light and this and that. If you consider somebody a really close friend, it's almost like it's as important or more important than a marriage.
Give me an
right?
example. Like, what are some of the little things?
At least for me, it is being there for the person for every little thing also. It's the small things that matter, it's the big things that matter. Yeah, celebrate their birthday in a big way. Yes, be there for them for their birthdays, this, that. I remember one incident where we were having like a big Diwali party. I'd asked 4, 5 people to get me ice, to make ice for me. All of them came with the ice.
Right.
Except for one person. And I was like, where's the ice? Oh, I didn't get it. So then I said, okay, your husband's coming. Can you ask him to get it? Didn't. And we did run out of ice. And then my other friends were like scrambling to get me ice.
And for context, this is before the Blinkit days. You couldn't even call for ice. So ऐप भी नहीं था. अब तो मतलब बर्फ खत्म होती है तो फोन लगाओ और बर्फ आ जाती है.
This is
मतलब
about
नहीं था वो.
like 15 years ago. So, with that, it just, there were incidences where every time I asked this person for something, it was not done. And it was one of my closest friends. And I was, keep letting it go, keep letting it go, keep letting
Brushing
it
it
go.
under
keep
the
letting it go.
carpet.
Yeah,
And
I was like, okay, forget it. But then, that person may have been the best friend to somebody else, but not for me. And, that's the thing about friendships also. If you're going out of your way for people, but you're not doing that for someone else,
Yeah.
so they may be the best friend to someone else, but if they're not doing that to you, then it's time you think about, where you are in this relationship and whether it makes you feel good or not.
But before you walk away or, just decide to distance yourself, do you have a conversation first and give them a chance to clarify, or has that ship already sailed?
It all depends on whether you feel that the person is going to take it. Is it going to be a conversation where they throw it back at you and they make excuses? I didn't feel that it was going to be worth my while to. Plus, there's also a thing where, you're constantly making plans with someone and ditching them at the last moment. So that was happening a lot also.
Yeah.
And at some point, I decided that, okay,
Yeah, you're basically not a priority
I'm
for
not
them.
happy.
Yeah.
I'm not happy. This friendship is not making me feel good about myself, and I'm done. And now I've got a friend who literally every time she goes for a haircut, she knows that there is this particular bread I buy that I eat. Almost every time she goes for a haircut, she will call and say, "Do you need this bread?" Or "I'm getting you a." And there was a really funny story. I was like, at home one day, and I'd called the store and I'd said, "Just keep these two breads for me, and I will send my driver to pick it up." And suddenly I get a call in the afternoon saying that, "Hey, listen, I'm trying to get these breads for this bread for you, but he's saying that it's already taken. Can you speak to him?" So the store, so the guy at the counter calls me and says, "Ma'am, this lady is asking for bread, but you want those two uh, loaves of bread, right?" And I was like, "Yeah." And then I spoke to her and she was like, "I'm buying them for you."
Yeah.
That was really funny. She was trying to buy me the bread that are already
Yeah. You guys
reserved.
have like a karmic connection anyways. So
I think so. So now that is a giver. Whenever I have any emotional distress, any, like anything, I can go to her and I can sit. She's not going to judge me. Like I have a couple of friends like this, like won't judge me, will not make it drawing room conversation, will not, it's so private for them because it's a vulnerability of mine. And that those kind of friendships you just hang on to and you try to be the best kind of friend to them too. So this is what I want in my life now. This is what I'm trying to foster in my life. Just be the best person to who's in your life. And if I don't feel that somebody is, you know, um, valuing me, I won't have them in my life.
I think you also want to be like, be mindful of the fact, like, when they would say matlabi friends, when almost someone wants to be your friend because they want something of you, right? And it could be the fact that, your circle of friends, so like they want access, maybe they've just moved into a city or a town, so they want access to, more people, hence they hang out with you. Some might want, be on your Instagram feed. I mean, times change, right? There's different things why people hang out. Some might want to shout out. They're looking to grow social capital and trying to get, more people on that side. So I think one has to be mindful of that as well. So if there is someone who is just always wanting something from you all the time and is not willing to give back. So again, the taker, not the giver. I think that's a really big one. I think another red flag for me is when someone is extremely competitive, like, and the kind of, it's a combination of competition and envy. So what's actually happening is that, oh, what are you driving right now? Where are you living right now? Where's your holiday? Summer holidays are coming up, so holiday pe kahan ja rahe ho, and khana kahan khaya. So it's almost like, where there's this, they're always competing and they're not necessarily happy when you're doing well. Now that is not a friendship.
One thing is being a good friend to someone who needs you or needs help. And the other thing is being happy for someone when something good happens to
Of
them.
course.
Okay. There are a lot of people who'll say, "Yay," but they're secretly like really unhappy about you doing well. This friend of mine was telling me that, she had this really, really nice friend for 10, 12 years. And they were both, just coasting through life. And then this friend of, and they were very close. And for her birthday, she made the most beautiful cake and she did so much for her. She was so touched because, she made it so personalized and there was a lot of love in that. The minute she started doing well, the minute she started, getting recognition for her work, this friends started changing. There was this competitiveness that came in, there was envy. I said, like, you give me an example of, how it, she says, for 3 years, every time we would meet, she would be like only talking about herself. "Oh, I'm doing so well. I'm doing this. I'm doing that." Never once ask a question about how are you doing? What's happening in your life?
Man, I hate that.
There's so many people like this who, you're asking all the questions. You want to get to know what's happening in the life, and there is no, they have no
No
interest in your
reciprocity,
life.
right? Yeah, I mean,
They have no
I've seen
interest
that
in.
with some people we know, and in 3 hours of a dinner meet, not once did you even ask, okay, like, dude, what's happening in your life?
But do you think it's because everything of yours is posted on Instagram?
I don't think you're connected.
No.
I think these are people who No, well, I mean, yes, they would even be like, "Acha, tura Instagram mein post
I mean,
aaya
there's
tha."
so many people who have, like, met us and said, "Oh, what's happening with you to me?" And they're like, "You? Oh, I know everything that's going on in your life because, like, every 10 minutes you're posting on
It's an
Insta."
interesting feed. If you're not following me on Instagram, it's Gaurav_GBA. Follow me on Instagram.
Yeah,
Or LinkedIn
could be
now.
that because
Say, no,
they already know
yeah,
you.
but yeah, I mean, I don't think we're actually connected on Insta. But it's just that, again, it's beyond a certain point. I mean, I like to listen in, and then the social conversation, I'm interested. But dude, like, hello, like,
One more
have a
thing,
conversation,
like, have
right?
you ever spoken to somebody who's busy talking about his or her, topics and just yapping away about, things? And the minute you start talking, the interest goes. And they're like, yeah. Oh my God, you do that to me once. I'd be like, okay, you do that to me twice. Bye. I'm done. Like, I will not, like, seriously, that is the biggest form of disrespect. And it says nothing about me, it says everything about you and how self absorbed you are. Or, like, please.
The learning from that has to be the fact that, if you want to be interesting, be interested, right? And I love third friend. I'll even throw a name over here, okay? So Ashish Khera, you're one of the top guys when it comes to just always wanting to know about people, complimenting people about something that they're wearing. You'll say great shirt and you'll have a nice conversation around that. This is one guy who's so unique. Every time he meets you, he always has something nice to say about you. He's always wanted to know about what's happening, in your life, and by virtue which everyone wants to hang out with this guy, right? And he doesn't care if you're not being, reciprocating, though everyone does. But I just think he's a really fun person, and he's got it pat down. So that's just one guy who is the other extreme, who just is a really interesting friend because he's always interested in what is happening in your life.
Another big red flag in a friendship is when somebody is constantly unloading their problems to you. Constantly, oh, this problem with my boyfriend, with my husband, with my in laws, with my this, with my that, and everything. And the minute you have an issue, you'll be like, you complain all the time. And that's happened with me. That friendship didn't last.
But I
Okay.
think you're
And
also that kind of person who people would just feel comfortable opening up
yeah,
to.
because I listen to people
Yeah.
and I don't judge them. So people, like, random people I meet, they start opening about their life's problems to me. And I'm not going to be sitting and talking about it to this one, that one, this one, that one. I don't.
I know people open up to me as well, but for different amount of stuff. I mean, it'd be like
And so,
my financial issues, not my emotional issues. Emotional issues, I'd be like, dude, like seriously, what's up?
I had this incident with this person, and this other person spent time with this girl, and she spent about 1.5 hours cribbing about her husband, her in laws, her life, her everything. And then she asks her, so, what about you? Don't you have any problems?
Yeah.
That's like, okay, misery loves company. So, if I'm miserable, you also have to be miserable. Otherwise, I can't be friends with you. Right? So, this is what we were actually coming to.
Yeah.
So she was in shock. She's like, yeah, I do have some problems, but they're not as bad as yours. Okay, I have shitty in-laws, but they're not as bad as yours. Okay. But it was like one of those things where she was like, but why don't you have any problems? And then she said, so she came and visited me, and then, criticizing everything about my house. The sheets are, crumpled, they're not ironed, and your house is so small, and you have like no house help, and you have no this that, and picking on every little thing. She's like, my God, this is the end of my friendship. So if you're miserable, if you're in a bad place in your life, most people, if you're not having a very good time and your friend is really rocking and has a if your marriage sucks
Sure.
and your friend is like rocking it and has a wonderful relationship with his or her spouse and this and that, I don't know. There'll be like this envy, there'll be a resentment. Not that, I hate you for being happy, but why can't it be me? And same with, when somebody starts doing very well in life and you're not, a lot of times there's a lot of resentment. But I do think it's like, if you can change that from why is this person so happy and, the resenting that person for doing well, I think you can change that thought to that person who's doing well. It's because they're working very hard. They're working hard at their marriage. Circumstances are different. Okay, like, you do sometimes have a bad rap in life. But how to not let that make you resent the other person who's doing well?
Of course.
That is like something that one needs to really work on. And you'll only work on it once you start working on yourself. Then you will start realizing it's nothing to do with them. It's everything to do with me
Correct.
and how I need to feel.
Yeah.
And they being happy and they saying, oh, I'm doing this. It's not to like show off to you. It's just that, this is their life. This is what they're doing. But yeah, there are some show offs, people who like constantly blabbing about, oh, this is so good and that's so good. And from the other side, if you know a friend of yours is not doing so well, maybe go a little easy on the.
Yeah, I mean, goes without saying, if there is someone who's not doing well, there's no way you're going to be, blabbing about stuff. And there's someone who's, overtly showing off. I would still not blab about stuff. I try to keep it understated. I think another, set of people you need to be wary of are people who are always yes men. Who never critical of, even if you're doing something wrong, they never come back and give you feedback, which would be good for you in the long term. They just want to be like people pleasers. They want to be, yes men or women. And I think that's something you want to be wary of, because if they're never being critical of you and they're always being in alignment with what you're saying, I think something isn't right over there either.
It's so important to tell somebody where they're going wrong also.
True.
And you can do it in a tactful way, or you can go, hammer and tongs.
Sure.
I used to go hammer and tongs, and I realized that's not the right way to do it. But, I feel that I'm being genuine and I'm telling you that this is what the problem is. And, yeah, you do end up hurting people's sensibilities, right? But there is a way to put it in a nice way so that, people can kind of figure out where they're going wrong. And I found that it always works.
Yeah. But I think you also need to understand the kind of person you are and also the person on the other side
Yeah,
as
I'm
well.
too blunt.
So, no, and I get that, right? What about aggressive friends? What about friends who, display aggression to an extent that it bothers you? Like, how do you, walk away from that? How do you address it? Thoughts on aggression?
I just distance myself. When you realize that I don't want to have these people in my life anymore, you don't go out of the bang. You just quietly walk away. You don't need any of that drama. So I find with aggressive people, I find them very hard to take, because if you're constantly on tenterhooks, if I say this person will start screaming. Any small thing will set them off. And I do know people like that. And there's this unpleasantness, and then there's fighting. No.
Yeah.
I can't do this.
Yeah. I get that. I think another, aspect that one has to be mindful of is that, let's say you were friends, okay, like just friends, and then for this other friend of yours, they got into a relationship or they got, married or, something changed for them and how that affects your dynamics. I think people have to be mindful, of that as well.
Yeah. So I think when you get into a relationship, seriously, is a change in dynamics.
Right.
So your best friend may feel like the third wheel in your relationship if they're single,
Right.
right? Even if they love you lots and whatever, the dynamics have changed.
Right.
The other thing is that you are in a place where if you don't like the person's partner, and it's really funny, but a lot of people you meet, like so many couples you meet that you hang out with, you like one person. Okay, you get along well with one person, you don't everyone doesn't get along with both.
Yeah. Sure.
So you have to decide how valuable that one person is. And then, of course, you make an effort and everything. But I don't see very, very strong friendships in people who only like one person out of the group.
True.
And of course, if your energies don't align, then for sure. So again, like finances, do they play a big role in friendships? Of course, right?
Yeah.
And like financial integrity is also quite a big thing, right? If you have a miser friend who's always like mooching off you, that's not like the best. I mean, it's not like they don't have the money yet.
Yeah. I think the financial aspect of it would be this. So let's say someone is stuck, and it could happen. There could be a crisis in their life, and they borrowed money to tide over that crisis, saying that we will pay you back. Right. And eventually what happened is they did tide over the crisis. Eventually they did get back on their feet. Eventually they did have the money, but they kind of forgot that they were borrowed from you. I think that's an issue. And it's happened, a couple of times, with me. And I think that's something that, stayed with me. So I think that's a big red flag, especially when they could afford to give the money back. It's not like, they got wiped out and you didn't want the money back.
So this, yeah. So another way, finances can affect your friendship is, this guy was saying that, we have a friend group and in different cities from school or college. And we made it a pact that every time we get together, whoever city you're in, that guy pays for everything, right? So it went on like that until they went to Mumbai, to this friend's city. And he turned around and said, like, yeah, we are all going Dutch because I don't want to pay. I don't enjoy going out with y'all. So I don't know whether he was like, okay, he didn't want to pay his share of stuff.
But he
Though,
enjoyed the hospitality
yes,
when he
he enjoyed
visited
everybody's
in their
hospitality
cities.
in their cities,
That's kind of
but
bizarre.
he didn't. But you have people like this, right? Who just don't want to spend money. They will happily take, but they will not give.
Sure.
As we conclude this episode, I would just say that, there are certain red flags that you see in people, and you need to choose your friends wisely. You need to learn to be a good friend yourself. Sure, you will make mistakes. Sure, you will be a crappy friend to some people. Sure, you will disappoint people at some time. Nobody's perfect. We all human. We all have feet of clay. We all are people who sometimes are amazing, sometimes not so good, sometimes downright idiotic. But I think at some point, you have to realize that friendships are meant to be uplifting, they're meant to be positive, they're meant to give you a feeling of joy when you're with them. Life is so hard anyway, right? I mean, you're struggling in so many aspects. But when you get together with your group of friends, you should just be able to sit and switch off and feel a sense of comfort and love.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's well said. And I would just like to conclude by saying this. Just know that, again, there are friendships, will come and friendships will go. Don't take it, too much at heart. Maybe it was just not meant to be. But if you have found that special bond, if you have connected with someone and they are going through a bit of a rough patch, or there is something that is just, not igniting the spark like it once, used to be in conversation. I think that's important as well. Be someone who, lets them know what you're thinking and why things, aren't the way they ought to be. And in the end of the day, at least have those 5 friends that you can count on the fingers of one hand. And I think if you have that, these people will be there for you no matter what comes your way. I think you're pretty blessed. And on that note, I think we end this particular episode. Hope you did find it useful. And again, I'd love to have your thoughts and your comments. Put that in the YouTube handle, send that to us on email as well. And the handle is loverollercoasterpodcast@gmail.com. Looking forward to hearing from you. Let us know about future topics and more. This is Gaurav and Mrinalini signing off.